Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of Tuesdays with Tiffany. This week, we are going to do something entirely new. Last week, we started with questions from the public. We went over 5 or 6 topics. This week, I sent a newsletter late last night because I realized I didn't collect questions for today's show. I sent it out at 10 o'clock last night asking people if they were still up. And in fact, they were. And by the time I woke up in the morning, we had 27 questions. So instead of doing a really deep dive into the answers, we're going to do our best to address every single question that came in. And what was most interesting is that of the 27 questions, there was very little overlap. They basically fell into, 3 important buckets. One was quality of life, one was safety, and the other was affordability. Sorry, I was drawing a blank for a second. But it was just amazing that so many people reached out on so many different issues, and we're just going to do our best. So we're going to go through the list in order. Al, my campaign manager, who we've met before, thanks Al for being here. He's got the list, and if you're someone who sent a fairly, what I'll say, content rich question, aka wordy, he's going to do his best to just kind of make it more concise. I know what the questions are, and I'll do my best to answer them all. So with that, I'll hand it over to Al, and we'll start.
Yeah, Tiffany, you ready for 27 questions with Tiffany? Oh my God, this is so
I am
exciting.
ready for 27 questions, rapid fire. Let's do our best.
So exciting. All right, here we go. And I'm not going to be able to transition between cameras every time, so sometimes people just hear my disembodied voice, and that's okay. All right, first question
Okay.
involves parking. Will you get rid of the dopey policy to charge for parking on Sundays?
Yeah, so Sunday parking. This is something that I was not supportive of, but I ended up voting yes because the original form of this ordinance was they wanted to charge for parking on Sundays all across the city in what they called business areas that was not well defined. So what I said is it should only be on Washington Street, and to the sponsors of it, which were Councilman Jabor and I believe Councilwoman Giotino at the time, and what they did is they incorporated it. And so often is the case, I may not support a bad ordinance, but if I can help to make it better, then I will support for it. So I was able to make it better to kind of limit it to a very specific area, which was Washington Street. So I said yes. Will we relook at it? Absolutely. We're generating a lot of money off of it, about $500,000 a year at this point. And, we're in a really tight budget crunch, which we'll address at a later date. But I will definitely look at whether or not the hours make sense. Should we shorten the hours? Having free parking on Sunday has always been an amenity for Hoboken residents. So I'm definitely happy to revisit it.
Awesome. We get faster and faster. What are you doing about quality and property taxes? Property selling for 3 million are paying less than new properties selling for 1.5 million. Because citywide reassessment has not been done for a decade. Reassessment will bring equality to property taxes, this person says.
Yeah, yeah, reassessment. Doing a tax reassessment is a third rail. I'm sure there's a few people watching this today that have PTSD from the last reassessment we did. Listen, what a reassessment, as someone pointed out, what a continuing reassessment does, which across America, is it constantly kind of resets taxes in a way that are more equitable. In a place like Hoboken, where our property values are changing dramatically every day, not only overall within our city, but also from one area of Hoboken that didn't have a lot of new development to another area that does. It can make it a little chaotic. So I am definitely supportive of a reassessment, but we need to do it in a way where we are thoughtful about what the impact is going to be on Hoboken residents. And we do things like easing in any increases over a period of, say, 5 years, or figuring out a program where people can borrow against the equity in their homes, so we can make sure that if people are on fixed income and they can't really afford an increase in taxes, that there's mechanisms for people to stay in their homes. It's complicated, but I worked the last one was before I was on the city council, and I actually worked very closely with Mayor Zimmer on it last time. It's an area that I have a tremendous amount of experience in professionally, just being a finance and a commercial real estate executive for a number of years. So this is something that we need to do, but we need to make sure that we have the right mayor in City Hall that is navigating through this with a resident first approach. Next question.
Absolutely. All right. What are you doing to increase Service and response of city departments.
I think out of everything on the list of 27, this was my single favorite question because the answer is so simple. We are just going to run City Hall better. We have some amazing City Hall employees that are very well intended. They're just significantly undermanaged. We've had a mayor who has had 1 or 2 feet out the door his entire time, focused more on reelection and staying in office. And just with the right leader in City Hall to inspire workers, to get them to contribute at their highest level, to collect their input on a better way to serving residents, I couldn't be more excited about this very specific issue. And just to say, my background is, again, when I look across the mayoral candidates, I have constantly managed teams. And most recently, in my last job, I managed an entire organization, multiple different departments, and actually was hired to restructure the entire company from an operational standpoint as well as a finance standpoint. So City Hall needs a little bit of a restructuring, and I am the gal to do it.
Good leadership's what we need. All right. What type of programs will you
We
have for
do.
the handicapped?
So this was another actual question that I loved, and a difficult one because we currently really don't have programs for people that are have different abilities, disabled, handicapped. There's a lot of words that are used, and I've actually spoken with some parents that have talked about having, programming specifically for kids with special needs, but there's also adults with special needs within our community as well. Whether again it is whether it's someone that is in a wheelchair, someone that may be blind. And what I think we need to do is really sit down with a group of people and come up with a plan to do that. There's some low hanging fruit that we could easily do, which is have programming for youth. In at the multi-service center for kids with different backgrounds. We do have a program right now, actually, which is bike program in Hoboken. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank, but it's basically a bike program in Hoboken to support kids with special needs being able to learn how to ride a bike. And it was probably the single best program I personally have ever worked on. You start with children, many of them on the autism spectrum, but either nonverbal, uh, uh, more on the extreme end of it, or other different developmental disabilities. Day one of bike camp, you think there's no way these kids are going to learn to ride a bike, and by Wednesday, everyone is sobbing. All kids are riding. I mean, it's really just an incredible program, and it was just really inspiring. And I think we can do a lot more. So I don't have a specific answer, but what I'd say, I'm committed to, finding a way to have more programming.
All right. Yeah. So the next question number 6. Why is there not more regulation for residents with 2 cars? It makes sense to have them garage one so additional street parking is available.
Yeah, you know what? We actually do have regulations for people with 2 cars. To have a residential permit, it's $52 for your first car, and then it goes up dramatically from there if you have a second, third, or fourth car. We just did a study that identified several people or several houses that have 2, 3, and 4 cars. I think this was a great idea that a second car, or maybe it's a third car, has to park in a garage. The issue is we don't necessarily have garages all across the city. One of the things that we're going to be announcing soon is a municipal parking garage in North Hoboken. This is something that has been, a priority of several council members, Councilman Giatino, Councilman Cunningham way back then, and even Councilman Bala when he was a councilman, and now he's supportive as a mayor. We've been able to finagle getting a municipal parking garage built in the North End. And with that, I think it just gives additional resources to the area of Hoboken that has the highest residential density as well as the most growth. And so hopefully there's an avenue that we will be able to, make better maybe policies about second and third cars. Because at the end of the day, our streets only have capacity for a certain number, and we do need to be thoughtful about encouraging people not to have more than one car. So next
All right.
question.
Number 7. Parks are nice, but 10% annual real estate increases aren't. How are you going to get our finances under control?
Oh boy. So this is a bigger topic that we're going to talk about in an entirely different Tuesdays with Tiffany, possibly as early as next week. Getting our finances under control needs private sector CFO type experience. And guess what? Private sector CFO here. I have been working for the last decade on the city council. I have led every single year to bring our tax increase down from the one Mayor Bala proposed. And really, how we've done that is really pushed to reduce wasteful spending. Some of the expenses are outside of our control. We have things like pension, we have healthcare costs that have gotten a little bit out of control. But within our control, there's so much more we can do, and just running the city better, running it more efficiently, running a city that is resident focused is and not campaign and political aspirations focused, will make us be able to not have as big tax increases, or to the extent if we have a tax increase, it will be very, very specifically tied to services that we're providing to the city, not services we're providing to the person in office. So a lot more to talk about on that, but I'm your person. I am, there's so many things that we can do better, and we will do better once this mayor leaves office.
All right. That was question number 7. Question number 8. This is a long one about garbage, but I think at the heart of the problem, how can we get our garbage pickup to work better to meet the needs of our residents, and how can we make enforcement more consistent?
Yeah, so this is coming out of actually one of the buildings in my neighborhood that's a unique situation where we're seeing garbage being picked up for all of Shipyard in one location, 6 days a week, overnight, in an area, on a street that's like a canyon. So it's creating a tremendous amount of disruption for the neighbors. And Shipyard is actually getting right now 3 days for free. They're only supposed to be getting 3 days a week pickup from the city. They're getting 6. So there's a million things that are wrong with that. And we've had we've had a mayor that's really been unwilling to kind of step in and correct it. And by correcting it, it is really forcing the owners of Shipyard to be just better neighbors and to be able to accommodate their trash pickup, on site on their big campus. Now we're getting there, we're working towards it, but I think at the crux of the question is, why aren't we taking more of an equity type approach citywide? Why aren't we being more consistent with enforcement where there feels pockets? We don't really have a lot of enforcement officers. And this is something that I've spoken to our prior business administrator about, hiring more enforcement officers that basically would pay for themselves and, through issuing violations. So, the response back to me was, we've never done that analysis on whether or not we could support it. We're always looking to kind of reduce headcount. And, that was a wrong analysis. And this goes back to, if we just run the city better and we make, all of our decisions resident forward, like this is an easy decision and this is something we can fix next time around.
Like you, puts the residents first, Tiffanie.
Next question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All about residents first.
Another question about quality of life. Can we stop the noise pollution from the leaf blowers?
We get it a lot. And the answer is yes, we can do more. I think the question was very specifically to kind of early morning and late in the evening leaf blowers. There's a lot about leaf blowers. One is they're gas powered. We have talked to the city about changing the law to go from gas to electric, and I think we're getting closer to being able to do that. Some of that is just a function of there really aren't leaf blowers that are available for commercial use that are electric. And 2 is just changing the hours that they're allowed to do it, and maybe narrowing it and making it just the middle of the day where it's less disruptive first thing in the morning and the evening. So I just saw that for the first time in terms of the hours. So we're going to take a look at seeing what we can do to kind of narrow the time frame.
So moving on to
Next.
question number 10, big milestone on affordability. What are your thoughts on the housing crunch in Hoboken? We have so many luxury buildings. What about space for more affordable spaces?
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest challenge that we have in Hoboken for a couple of reasons. One is being in the shadow of New York City. As New York City grows, so does Hoboken, in terms of demand for residential space. So we have, and the more attractive community we are, the greater demand we have for living here, greater demand, the greater the pricing is. So there's market forces that are very difficult for us to control, but it's really when, it's that situation that requires the city to step in and say, what can we do to make rents more predictable? What can we do to bring the type of housing in that would give us more diversity of economic diversity across our housing? And so we have like 6,300 units that are either, in process or about to be approved, 700 of which are affordable. Now, affordable is more on the low income side, but the higher end of affordable is kind of, the low end of middle class. What we don't really have a lot of is workforce housing. And workforce housing is really just nomenclature for middle class housing. And so what I, as mayor, what I would propose is every new development requires a minimum amount of workforce housing. And I've actually even raised the possibility of one of the newer buildings having all workforce housing as the 10% and maybe none of the lower income housing, just to be able to start inserting some of the more variety of housing in there. But otherwise, we need to enforce our rent control laws aggressively. I think you're going to see more predictable rents from a lot of the buildings that were built 30 years ago. They're coming to the end of their 30-year exemption, so they will roll into rent control. And it's also protecting housing like Marine View and, Church Towers and Clock Towers and a number of other buildings that were really built as kind of that middle income housing. It's protecting those and ensuring that that type of housing continues. So it's not a one size fits all deal, but it really takes a strategic approach and knowing developer math, knowing how we can insert ourselves as a government and say, you have to build this kind of housing, but understanding what that does to their profit margins so we can come up with a solution that still works for a developer and still works for the city. And guess what? I know developer math and none of the other mayoral candidates do. So another skill set that is directly relevant to being a good mayor.
Talking about
Next.
diversity of skill sets. This is a very important question. Question
Yeah.
number 11. What is the average flight speed of an unladen swallow?
Oh my God, when I saw this, I knew exactly what it was because I am a Monty Python fan. So I just want to thank the person for throwing it in the middle of all these really tough questions. It was the exact, levity that I needed as I was thinking about the tougher issues. So thank you.
So, question number 12. What is being done about the homelessness problem? It's very concerning and a big problem in Hoboken.
It is. So, it, this is, if anyone has had a conversation with me, they'll know that I constantly say the following phrase that I think the biggest issue that America faces right now is adults without a stable future. And, so it's really a macro issue, right? We've moved jobs overseas. We've made it harder to find jobs that would allow you to support yourself in later years of your life, right? We've made housing more expensive, and we've created situations for thousands, and I would argue probably millions of American adults that every day are more and more stressed about being able to keep a roof over their head, on the table, support their children without a lot of certainty about their future. And that stress contributes to mental health issues. So it's terrible, as we see social safety nets removed, discussions of Medicaid, being reduced, and just no real solution about helping to address this single issue. So, this issue is probably the most important issue to me as a person, as an elected official. How that has transcended to what I do locally is I'm very involved in this topic of homelessness. The city of Hoboken has done this mayor has not done very little or has not done very much at all. When I speak with people that work at our amazing homeless shelter, when I speak to people at Garden State Episcopal, which is the county's homeless resource, when I speak to people at the Waterfront Project, when I speak to, people that run the Hoboken Community Center that provides housing for men that would otherwise be homeless, when I speak to the social workers at the city of Hoboken, which are amazing, or the social workers at the Hoboken Library or the hospital, the management at the hospital that I'm on board with. Like, I have all of those conversations all the time. And what is missing is really sitting down and having a regional approach to this issue. We are not going to be able to solve the homelessness crisis, but what we need to do is figure out, as a group, what's the best way for us to help people that are unhoused and get them back. The homeless shelter does a lot of amazing things. And, we can work individually. We've taken someone in my neighborhood and we're able to find housing for him. I'm working with a social worker at Garden State Equality to address a man in Hoboken who has lived under the Willow Avenue Bridge for 20 years. seniors. He has a brother that lives in housing in Hoboken. He has another brother in Weehawken. How do we get that man off the streets into housing? Garden State Equality or Episcopal has been amazing. They've been able to get him his documents. They've just got him food stamps. They're getting him his welfare checks. Now that's going to start, but it took a big effort, and there's a lot of people that are really focused, and we just need to get them all in a room and come up with a plan. And I've talked with all of them. This is a big issue for me. I can tell you again, none of the other mayoral candidates have done anything anywhere close on this issue. And I want to give a shout out to, Jen Giatino, who led with her heart and really introduced me, pathways to a number of these people. And I just inherited it, embraced it. It's my own. And this is an important issue for me.
The viewers and listeners don't get to see is literally while we're doing sound checks, Tiffany's fielding calls from caseworkers.
Yeah, I did. Actually, I did today. Case Walker of the man who lives under the Willow Avenue Bridge was calling me while we were getting ready.
So the next question, we're trying to rapid fire. We're getting close to the halfway point here. What can be done to reduce the amount of graffiti and stickers all over town?
Again, goes back to running the city better. We have a very reactive approach, and we just need really a proactive approach to this specific issue. Just someone that their sole job basically is going around and just cleaning our surfaces in our public spaces. So I think there's more we can do with the Hoboken Business Alliance too on some of our commercial areas. They have a really good additional cleaning service called CDS that does a lot of this on Washington Street. So I think it's it's leveraging that resource, working better together, and not necessarily duplicating efforts, but making it a concerted effort.
All right, what can anything be done about the cars and motorcycles racing down 15th Street on weekend and summer nights, or the ones blasting music at 1 a.m., or the ones revving their seemingly unfiltered engines?
So the answer is I wish, and this has been the bane of my existence for all 10 years I've been on the city council. For people that aren't aware, I am on the second floor. I face the water, but I hear all of those revved engines that are on 15th Street going down the waterfront, across Shipyard Lane. So I'm empathizing with everyone. The answer is yes, we can. There's not really a lot we can do from an enforcement standpoint because the Attorney General actually has a directive that says our Hoboken police cannot stop anyone for a nuisance issue like that. They can stop them for a safety issue. If they run a stop sign with music on, they can get a ticket for both. But having just a little bit more police presence up here and even issuing warnings or just talking with these people saying you're in violation and possibly figuring out a way to leverage our parking utility resources. That's a little bit more difficult because a lot of this happens late at night and there's some safety concerns when you're approaching a car late at night that really we need to leave it to our police department to do that. But if it's earlier in the evening, we probably can leverage our parking utility resources a little bit more on this.
All right, another question. 15 now. What's being done about the garbage pileup not in containers on Washington Street every night from the condos and businesses?
So this is something I'd like to know a more specific example of it, but in general, it goes back to I think I made the comment before, we don't have enough enforcement officers. So I think we need to understand what's happening and we have to have our enforcement officers out there more in the evening, right around when this is happening, which we often don't do. I believe, I don't know the hours of our enforcement officers, but I think we need more officers and we need to take a more proactive approach to that. To me, it feels like an enforcement issue.
All right, can you update the community on the status of the Harborside Park?
Yep. So the Harborside Park is moving forward. We're going to have a public, I believe, the first week of July. They had originally set it for the last week of June, but it's July 4th week, and I thought people would be away. It's moving forward. The question may stem from what feels like some inaction uptown, but really, I think if you're out there every day and you watch, it's pretty amazing the progress they've made on the park itself. You're going to see soon they're going to narrow the walkway on the western side of the Weehawken Cove shortly because they're going to start working on the installation of the actual grassy area that is adjacent to the cove, which is going to be amazing. And so you're going to see a little bit more progress. There was a standstill in the alleyway between Bloomfield and Washington. And this had to do with materials. They were waiting on concrete that was a very specific color. They're going to be back out there, hopefully finishing that by the end of July is what we're hearing. So you're going to see a lot more activity up here. In the beginning, I will tell you, there was some redirection of resources when Jersey Avenue was closed, where they took some resources from uptown and put them downtown, trying to navigate what was an incredibly complex construction site, downtown that closed Jersey Avenue. But it is definitely progressing. It's still supposed to be on schedule, and I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of the more visible improvements along the way. But we'll have a public meeting first week of July. I believe I'll come back with a date.
Management.
Next.
Every project manager's nightmare when you run out of one specific thing. All right.
Yeah.
What can we do about all the geese? Each year, the number of geese is growing. Can't walk along the waterfront.
Yes. So just yesterday, I took a baby goose that had a broken leg to the Wild Bird Fund. I'm a big fan of baby geese, and I'm the one that is tagged every time there's a hurt bird in Hoboken. I'm always happy to be supported. It's my passion, helping animals. The geese in general is a couple things. One is we definitely need to control them more outside of mating season, and we do have geese patrol in across our parks that we just need to do a better job of that. The geese generally are worse in areas where we have grassy areas, where we don't have grassy areas or areas available for them, on the water side of the walkway. So for example, downtown all along like the piers around Peary Park, we see a lot of geese that are on the grass there. And as a result, between the grass and the water, they'll often poop on the walkway. We need to clean the walkways more. Just in general, we started a power washing program every Saturday, apparently up at Maxwell Park. I'm not familiar exactly with what the program is downtown, but we do need to more actively clean it. And we just need to do our best to, discourage geese from coming. Where I will say, it just is who I am. As soon as mating season starts, if there are nests, we just can't touch them. They're protected. We need to let them do their thing, and we need to be humane about keeping families together. But we do need to more actively find a way to keep them kind of in the water or in areas. We have some areas uptown where the geese just nest, and they actually don't come on the sidewalk. So I think as we over time, if we think about maybe adding some grassy areas on the water side of the sidewalk, it may be a way to keep the grass closer to, or the geese closer to the water. The other thing I would say on this topic is geese do not jump over fences. So we may need to think about putting some fences around some of our grassy areas. They may fly into it, but they won't walk into it. So that's something that we can consider as well.
Changing perspective a little bit from the east side to the west side.
Yeah.
When are they going to pave the streets of West Downtown? Specifically, they named Jefferson, Madison, and Observer.
Sure. This is downtown. I actually just had a conversation with our Hoboken parking utility director a few days ago in the context of we need to be paving streets and not always redesigning streets. If we wait to redesign streets, a number of streets like the ones that they're mentioning could just fall into a state of disrepair. I believe we just approved a contract for a vendor to come and actually do the repaving of pretty much all the areas that are on that list. I don't know specifically if it's all of them, but he let me know that they're doing that down there. And I actually asked if we could do the same thing on 13th Street up here. We have a complex situation about kind of redesigning 13th Street, and it would be better served to just repave it. So they were looking into expanding that contract for 13th Street. But this is an issue I hear from Ruben, myself, we're constantly saying we need our streets repaved. And we used to have a program for doing it. And then under Mayor Bala, he switched to just redesigning. And I get the importance of redesigning, but we cannot let our streets fall into a state of disrepair, and not take care of them. We need to do paving, and that area should be done pretty shortly.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's keep going. Question number 20. Still rapid fire. Would you
Yep.
allow fair access
All right,
to
we're
all
getting
groups
there. Yep.
Would you allow fair access to all groups for painting city crosswalks?
The answer is I love, love, love our Pride crosswalk. And I helped paint it last 2 weeks ago. And the answer is yeah, I'm always open to whatever we can do to celebrate. What I would say is, we need to be thoughtful about that, A, because we only have a certain amount of intersections, and B, we just, we can't we can't serve all masters, right? We just need to think about what within our community we want to celebrate, and but I'm open to celebrating as many different groups of people as possible. So yes.
So one more here. How can we coordinate recreation development projects and surveys so we look at space and amenities holistically instead of piecemeal?
This is a really, really critical issue. So at the national level, the biggest number one issue is adults without a stable future. At the local level, the biggest issue we have is we're running out of space, and we are not managing the space we have appropriately. We are doing it in an ad hoc basis. We are doing it in a piecemeal basis. We are giving away our land. Is it too late? It's too late because for the parks that are already designed, but it's not too late to address the needs if we need to repurpose some of these parks over time to really meet the needs. But we do need to think about it strategically, because we have a population of people of all ages that like to use recreation, from pickleball users that are generally adults to little tiny, 3 and 4 year olds that do art in the park, or 5 and 6 year olds that are running around playing the most adorable soccer you've ever seen, and everything in between. And we need to figure out a way to serve our broader community with the limited space that we have. So this is a huge priority for me, just thinking about our land use from a strategic standpoint. Personally, I think we need to stop everything we're doing, take a step back, and instead of doing things piecemeal to address whatever the campaign is that's in front of us, whatever the election is that's in front of us, we need someone brave enough to sit down and say, you know what, we need to take a wider, more strategic approach. And that's who I am, and that's what I do.
From someone who's
All right,
been
next.
serving in city government for
Yeah,
10 years now.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
With a
Uh,
strategic mindset.
exactly. So this next question is about parking on North Sinatra. They're asking if you can explain the parking configuration. Specifically, they're looking at the block outside of the Paris Baguette over there.
Yeah, I saw that question first thing this morning, and I haven't been over there yet to see it. So I'm going to come back to that one at a later date, or maybe email the person directly. I can't exactly envision what they're saying. So I'll walk over and take.
Makes sense. All right. Next question. What is your plan for flooding and making Southwest Hoboken visible and attractive to the community? They asked several questions, actually. Do you frequently visit Southwest Hoboken?
Yeah,
What
I
does Southwest
think.
Hoboken mean to you? That kind of thing.
Yeah, they want to. I think the question comes from, how committed I am to Southwest Hoboken, and the answer is I'm super committed. When you're a ward council person, your tendency is to focus on the micro level within your ward, and you kind of defer to the ward council person. But that being said, we all vote on everything that impacts the city citywide. I can tell you that I've had a big handprint on a few things in Southwest Hoboken, including the expansion of the Southwest Park. Recently, the closures of Jersey Avenue. I mean, that impacts everyone in Hoboken that tries to exit Hoboken and through the Southwest, but it mainly impacts Southwest Hoboken that is sitting within the rat's nest of traffic that's been backed up. When we were originally told that that was going to be a 5-month closure, I inserted myself and said, absolutely not. I worked very closely with the DEP, I worked closely with the city, and said, and understood that their priority when they originally came up with a 5-month closure was the interests of the contractor and what was easiest for them. And I just said, that's not what we're solving for. We're solving for keeping a lane open, least disruption to Hoboken residents. And then within that constraint, we need to solve for whatever, the means and methods are of the. I've just always been a big part of the Southwest redevelopment plan. When they redeveloped the Chambord building, there was a lot of focus on making sure we knew it was a grocery store like desert, a food desert, making sure that we had a grocery store in that area. Unfortunately, that developer didn't, I think, developed an incredibly beautiful building, but it ended up being a lot more expensive than he originally contemplated. And so as a result, we have to kind of relook at our support for it to make sure that we can still get a grocery store in there. But that still, is the number one priority. Housing Authority is in the fourth ward. The Housing Authority was the reason why I ran for office the first time. The redevelopment of the Housing Authority is, to me, the most important project in Hoboken. Just, improving the lives of our neighbors that live there. And then just overall flooding. There's no one that's done more for flooding in Hoboken than me. I've been at the forefront of Rebuild by Design and pretty much every additional infrastructure investment to support relief of everyday flooding that we absolutely have. So it's really, really important to me. They just probably haven't seen me as much because I'm working on some of the bigger things and really letting the ward councilman focus on maybe some of the, corner by corner issues. But yeah, I'm all in for the fourth ward. Love it. Oh, importantly, the very first place I lived in Hoboken for my first year and a half was the Southwest, was the fourth ward. I lived on Jackson Street between Newark and Observer Highway in the blue building that is there, that is just off the corner, and loved every bit of being close to First Street and just loved every bit of that neighborhood. So I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in for 4. Yeah, and one thing I do want to add just on this, I forgot, we talked about it earlier, is we've added Dave Mello to the Team Fisher slate. And part of the reason why, when I was trying to figure out, people that I wanted to talk to about running, was I am in the second ward, right? I am in the Uptown Hoboken. I'm, experienced citywide, but it was important to me to bring someone in that was from the fourth ward, and I couldn't have been more excited. Dave actually was the architect of the original Southwest Park. He was part of the advocacy group that actually led to him joining or running for office. So he brings a wealth of knowledge, and when I talked to him, couldn't be more excited about the further investment in his neighborhood.
Nice. All right,
Anyway,
this
next.
one's very detailed, so I'm gonna read it verbatim here. We got 3 to 4 weeks ago, PSE&G removed 2 functioning streetlights along the railing on Sinatra, one right at the foot of 12th. But
That's all you have to
okay,
say. It's
all right.
okay. Wait. You don't have to say anymore. It's not that detailed. It's that answer is I don't know the answer. And I saw that. I didn't realize too. This is 2 light posts are removed from the Uptown waterfront, and they just want to know the status of when they're going to be replaced. I wasn't aware of it so until just now. So I have a note into the city to find out what the status is, and I'll probably let that person know.
Awesome. Okay.
All
Next
right.
one. Whatever happened to the police officers on bikes that patrolled around town a few years ago?
Yeah, they. I don't know exactly when you're talking about, but we've had bikes on police officers on patrol almost every year. We did see them earlier, like a month or so ago. I know that they'll be back. I know there's plans to have them back. We recently added 23 new police officers, basically backfilling empty positions, and so many of those new police officers have been put on bikes. So I think we'll just start seeing more and more of them.
All right. This next person says, I should be able to find parking within 2 blocks of my house. How are we going to fix this?
And they live uptown, right?
Yeah, uptown for 30
They said
years.
in that, yeah. Yeah, so parking is, I would say that parking is the number one or number two quality of life issue that for every person in Hoboken, whether it's someone who parks in a garage but has family visiting and doesn't want to spend $40 for a day for them to park in a garage, or or maybe they have contractors, or it's just someone who doesn't park in a garage, and it gets harder and harder to find parking. It really touches everyone. It's always been a top issue, and I will tell you that I am very much a pro parking council person. Not because I want to see more and more cars in Hoboken. It's the practical reality that we have them. What I'm most proud of recently is I've been able to get our new head of the Hoboken Parking Utility to say that he supports off-street parking and building a new parking garage in Northwest Hoboken, a municipal parking garage, because he believes the more cars that we can put in off-street parking, the more we can free up spaces to do other things than just parking, like loading zones, et cetera. So this is a big issue, for me. I have pushed, and I believe successfully, we will be delivering a municipal parking garage right behind the gas stations in Northwest Hoboken. I think that will provide some relief to people looking for monthly parking. We actually don't have a lot of monthly parking garages across the north end of Hoboken, and I think that this will be helpful, and it will be a municipal parking garage. So hopefully it'll be priced, a little bit inside, what we see the private parking garages. So it's really, having a parking policy that encourages people to use public transportation, and quite frankly, we need to have public transportation, a better like public transportation within Hoboken, so that we can encourage people not to have cars. We made some headway way back when with corner cars, but really what we need is to kind of relook at the HOP and come up with a better transport system around, the city, to give people a really reliable and good alternative to walk out, walk a block, get on something that will take them where they need to be, as opposed to, using their car. Maybe they'll rethink of having the car. So, but it's a top issue for me. It's always been a top issue for me.
We're grounded home base here. Question number 26. Who's in charge of,
Two more.
I know, who's in charge of policing parking at bus stops? Specifically, they were complaining about the 126 route, and they say when buses park so far out, it's hard for people with disabilities to board the bus.
Yeah, so a couple of things in that question. First, during the day, it's HPU. It can be the police as well, but it is HPU, and I see them. They're aggressively out there. They don't get everyone, but they get a lot of people. Two, the 126 bus doesn't like to actually generally pull into the bus stop, so we should probably try and understand. If there are specific areas in particular where we're not meeting the needs of people that are disabled, that we're better meeting those needs. And I think we need to work with the 126. It's not to say that they shouldn't stop at every single bus stop, because they should. I just don't know how much we'll be able to get them to stop at all of them. I'm happy to advocate for them to stop at every single one of them, closer to the curb, as close as possible, and do more enforcement. But at the same time, if we know, for example, there are two stops where there happens to be, someone in a wheelchair, or someone on crutches, or someone with mobility issues, every single day, we should at the very least have the 126 bus be making a special accommodation to make sure that it's as easy as possible for that person to get on the bus. And I have a good relationship with New Jersey Transit, so this is a conversation I've had with them before. I'm happy to have with them again.
All right. Last question. Ready for this, Tiffany? That's it.
I am.
All right. How are you going to rein in FedEx and UPS trucks and even Amazon vans dangerously blocking intersections by parking in the yellow marked zones?
Yeah, so I think this is on everyone's mind right now because of the tragedy that just happened in Jersey City, where a UPS truck parked at a corner, was trying to get out, and backed into a young child that was ultimately killed. And it is just heartbreaking across the board. And I think whether you have kids or don't have kids, whether you're an elected official, a neighbor, you know, uh, I think everyone who lives in Hoboken could envision something like that, happening in Hoboken as well. I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've done at our intersections, and I will give Mayor Bala that. There's been a focus on daylighting and ensuring visibility as much as possible at every intersection, and it's not perfect. I can tell you it's been a focus of mine. We have complicated intersections across the second ward where we've made a lot of improvements in places where we couldn't get stop signs, et cetera. This issue of parking, I think that of these delivery trucks, I think there's more we can do with this. I think we can do more daytime loading zones. This comes back to the parking concerns people have. But I've, been socializing with neighbors in the second ward about putting in loading zones that are, say, 8:30 to 5:30. So during the day, they're loading zones where delivery trucks can park, but it reverts to parking at the end of the business day when people come back from work. And the second, I think that we can actually meet with Amazon, FedEx, the delivery trucks, and test a delivery during the day zone only, and get them to maybe come up with a way where their delivery for Hoboken only happen during the day. And they may have to deliver in the evening, but we just have to have a zero tolerance, and maybe we even increase penalties for them parking, crossing a crosswalk and in these areas, in the evening. we're a city that gets deliveries, right? We just are, but there's definitely more we can do by talking with these delivery companies to get them to deliver at better times. But we have to provide those locations, for it. We don't, in most blocks, we don't have loading zones. So that's where the city needs to take a more strategic approach and a more citywide approach on solving this issue, so we can ensure that we're doing everything to avoid, the tragedy that just happened in Jersey City, which my heart goes out to that family.
It is terrible, but we'll say we've reached the last question. That's it, Tiffany. How
We
exciting.
did. Oh my God, it is super exciting. And it's actually been, it was It was actually really great. I mean, I love talking to people. I love hearing what their issues are. I hope I was able to give an answer on every single question that was asked. There's a couple I need that are very specific that I need to follow up on, and I will. And I hope the questions come. I've said before, I'm a moth to a light bulb. What you see is what you get. I will try and address any question that is thrown my way to the best that I can. And you may not like the answer, but I can't, all I can do is say I'm working hard to, you know, address these issues with a resident focus, making sure our community is first, our residents are first, and we are always thinking strategically, both short term and long term about what the impact is to our residents. Some issues are harder to solve, some are easier to solve, but I can't even solve them if we don't understand what the issues are. So I'm going to try this Are You Still Up newsletter next Monday night. So be on the lookout for it. And we'll see if we can get any questions in advance the night before as well. So make sure you stop by the YouTube page, my YouTube page, and you'll see it's all along the bottom, and you'll see all my Tuesdays with Tiffany. And Al's done a great job about listing all the topics. We'll do our best to list the time and the topics here. We may just list the topics in order, but definitely stop back, listen if there's any issues. If you don't like what I've said, you want to engage, you can call me at 201-208-1674, or you can email me at tiffany@tiffanyforhoboken.com. So I guess and go to my website, tiffanyforhoboken.com. So I guess that concludes our Tuesdays with Tiffany. I don't know how long this was, but it was longer than last time. But thanks to everyone for watching. Thank you for the amazing questions, and thank you, Al, for being my partner.
Bye, everybody.